two, one.
Hey Village, it's your girl Tasha Ray, the host of Red Lipstick Conversations. Today, I have an amazing guest with me who I met at the co-working space Luminary. If you are not familiar with what Luminary is, it is essentially WeWork, but way better, in my opinion. So if you don't know the origin of co-working spaces as it pertains to women here in New York in particular, I used to be a part of membership at this co-working space called The Wing. So if you ever visited the Wing in whatever city and state that you live in, then think of that. Because that is basically what Luminary reminds me of. But they also have a community of women and people that are allies to entrepreneurship and supporting women. And so as I was just in there doing life, trying to manage all that I do, I happened to come across an amazing individual. His name is Tim Miner. And so today we are going to be exploring the topics of AI technology and then overall life in general. And so, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. Very glad to be here.
Thank you so much. And happy Friday.
Yes.
So, let's just dive right in. If you
Sure.
could tell the audience what your title is as it pertains to your field of work in technology.
Okay. I am the CEO of a company called By the People Technologies, and we are AI strategists. So we help companies implement AI in their products and services to become more competitive.
I love that. Simply because I feel like we need to understand, speaking from the perspective of a woman in business, and I'm trying to utilize resources to the best of my ability. So I would consider myself to be an early adapter. Would you consider yourself to fit that narrative as well?
Definitely.
Okay.
Been in technology for the last 20 years, but I've been saying that for a couple of years too. So it's been maybe a little longer. You can see by the blonde highlights of my hair. But I've been in technology for a long time and therefore seen a lot of changes and a lot of things that have surprised people as they've changed. And AI is no different than all those other technological changes.
So, can we break it down for the people in the back and or
The ones in the cheap seats, right?
yes, what specifically is AI? Because I understand that there are a lot of various different apps that utilize AI,
There is.
but how do you define AI?
So AI, artificial intelligence, is defined as the process of a computer doing something a human could do, but doing it artificially, as in doing a human. But in reality, it's based on a completely different computer structure. See, we're used to deterministic computers. In other words, you type something in Excel and it pops right up on the screen. It can be on your folder, anything you want to. What AI is based on, though, however, is on probabilistic computers.
Okay.
So that's why this whole concept of this, when you, for instance, ask something in a ChatGPT, this is the one everybody knows, give me an essay on Abraham Lincoln. Well, you can ask it 5 minutes later, give me an essay on Abraham Lincoln, and it will be a completely different essay. It won't be factually different. They'll both be on Abraham Lincoln, but they will have taken it from a completely different topic set, different lengths, different ways of expression. It will have come from a completely different sense. So it's not going to be guaranteed to give you the exact same thing every time, which is why it's very hard for us, those people who grew up in the computer age, to learn everything is going to come exactly as I tell it. With AI, it won't.
Okay, so I want to kind of go deeper, but kind of veer off as it pertains to media in my background. And that's because plagiarism is something that was often spoken about during my collegiate career and post when I was doing my graduate work. And so what I'm trying to understand is we talk about checks and balances as it pertains to government and various other systems. So when we're speaking to AI, and let's say I am trying to, I don't know, come up with, I don't know, some text for my website, for example, and let's say AI is gathering information and gives it to me, and then I put it on my website. How do we draw the line, or how do we determine? Because I, the human, inputted what I wanted, and then something then came back. So where does plagiarism fit into that conversation?
Plagiarism comes into play if you've taken a copy of someone else's output
Okay.
and said, I'm going to use that text again, right? I've written my essay on Abraham Lincoln. I'm going to copy and paste that and say, that is mine.
Okay.
Yeah, well, that's not true. You copied it from someone else. What AI does, on the other hand, is it has everything that is possibly known about this person, Abraham Lincoln, stored somewhere deep within its memory. And every time you ask it for an essay on Abraham Lincoln, it will start from the beginning, go through the whole amount of information it has, give you an answer back, and start writing an essay on Abraham Lincoln. So both on how to write an essay, how to put this. So there is no two times that you can ask it to do this where you'll get the same text. They will always be different because it's a generative computer. It's a generative AI, and every time it'll regenerate a brand new output based on that. So for someone to say, hey, that is mine, you should not be able to do that, you should not be able to use that, that's going to be impossible if it's an output from AI, because everything AI creates is brand new. Now, one will say, well, how did it learn about Abraham Lincoln? Is the knowledge about Abraham Lincoln something that no one else should know except the Abraham Lincoln Foundation or something like that? Now we're getting into areas where it starts to get gray. Or even better, if I ask it, give me an essay on Abraham Lincoln, but write it like some famous author wrote it. Well, how does it know how that famous author wrote if it doesn't know the writings of that famous author? Now we're getting into the gray area. It's still a brand new essay. That author has never written this essay before, but his way of expression and stylistically, we could see some similarities because we asked for it. Are those similarities okay? Legally, that is not clear yet.
Okay.
If I was a John Grisham, I love John Grisham novels. I read every one of his novels. I've studied them all. I've almost memorized them, read them so often. And then I decide I'm going to become an author. But guess what? My work of knowledge that I put together as my first book is going to sound a lot like John Grisham. How much is John Grisham going to be owed from my first book? Absolutely zero, right? There's no question. No one will question me in a court of law anywhere because I wrote that book. Now, this is the same way. This is something that has perceived all this information into this humongous size of a brain, and when we ask it to give it back, it's going to look just like our language would be, give us an answer back out of that information. Does John Grisham get something out of that just because I asked it to write like John Grisham? Now, I'm not going to give you the answer to that because the courts are still trying to figure that one out, and poor John Grisham is trying to figure out himself. But it's a similar type of situation.
Okay, so when I was graduating university about almost over 20 years ago,
Don't date yourself.
they were just coming up with a way to be able to identify plagiarism. So they could, let's say I print out on Word what I did, and then they would upload it to somewhere, and then they would flag certain portions.
You bet.
And there was a big thing about attributing sources. And if you have your footnotes and everything correctly, and you say that what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is original thought, or how do you identify original thought, especially if you know that you are being influenced by, let's say, your favorite author. Is that something that is still a gray area, or is it something that's become clearer in that time?
It is still a gray area because our traditional ways of doing that, when you gave them a block of text, they went and looked at that block of text and said, find me this on the internet anywhere. And if it found blocks of text on the internet somewhere, you're flagged as plagiarizing. In this case, you can't do that. With AI-created text, you won't be able to find that text anywhere. But they will say, well, you used AI to do it. right? But the reality was that wrong? Is that bad? You used the tools that were given to you to create this. In our schooling system right now, we have one way, unfortunately, and by the way, our education system in the United States needs some work. Right? We're not doing well.
No, we're not. Especially on the world stage.
Right. So we have this thing called an essay to determine whether a kid knows about something like Abraham Lincoln. Well,
Right.
that's over. Those days are over. We can't do that anymore because they have AI at home and they can create a brand new work that would sound like the most amazing thing they've ever written would be coming out of AI. But what if we got the kids together and said, okay, kids, we've got a special day tomorrow. Abraham Lincoln's coming by the class. What would you ask them? And someone would say, well, I would ask him, did he ever hunt? What was his favorite foods? You know, how often did he ride a horse? Those are the questions I would ask Abraham Lincoln. Okay, you go home, ask AI those questions, and then when you get back to class tomorrow, you tell the whole class those answers that you got. Now what we've created is suddenly these little researchers that know how to use the greatest tools that there are available to then be to the highest level of education. That's what we should be doing. We should be educating them to that level, not making them people that just write essays so that they can pass a class.
I like that. Supporting original thought and creativity. So I want to speak to the survey that I did with my audience as it pertained to what they knew about AI and the various different ways in which we can employ it. So one of the things that came back was an overarching fear about either utilizing it incorrectly or somehow being replaced by AI or just fear in general. And so what I want to know is, in your work life, is that something that you experience? And if so, how are you navigating the fear?
Good question. Good question. And because it's very topical. The New York Times came out with a good article, and I call them out on what this one good article is because they have done a lot of sensationalists on this topic. But they came up with one thing. What are we actually worried about with AI? And they came up with three things that we're worried about. Number one, we're worried about misinformation.
Okay.
We should be. Second thing we're worried about is it taking our jobs. We should be. The third thing they're worried about is loss of control. You know, I call it the Terminator 14 topic, right? What's going to happen? So let's take those three. And the first thing is misinformation. These AI engines, these large language models, have the possibility of hallucination. We don't call it hallucination because we love 60s drugs, right? But call it that way because it internally creates these facts. And these internally created facts, it'll suddenly determine, hey, this is real. It thinks that's real. It has to give you an answer, and it's going to give you that as an answer. I had just the other day, ChatGPT telling me that Mexico is north of the United States. And I said, no, it's south of the United States. No, it's north of the United States. We went back and forth, and I pressed the button. I said, clink, and it goes back to OpenAI. And someone in OpenAI is probably going to check how it got to that logical misconception. And it probably is never going to happen to anyone else again. But the reality, that's what hallucinations are. Now, this has gotten way out of proportion. ChatGPT 3.5, when it first came out, would hallucinate about 7% of the time. 4, when it came out, was doing like less than 4% of the time, and now this latest version is under 1% of the time. So it doesn't happen often. But my antidote to that is you just never trust anything that comes out of a large language model. We're not at a point yet, or maybe we'll never be at the point when I communicate to people, I communicate from me. So if I give a communication to someone that has to go to my boss, a report or something like that, well, clearly that is my work. So no matter who created what ChatGPT created, I have to read through and factually correct everything that's in there.
Right.
That same thing goes in with bias.
Okay.
Same thing goes with anything else in my sense. Everything, when I do something with ChatGPT right now, I look forward and I say, you know, I don't like the way that started. Give me another introduction to this, or I'll rewrite the introduction, or that last third paragraph, that was completely off. Let's do something else. I will kind of co-write it together with Chat. But finally, that's my work that is going out. It's not so, and I tell that to everybody. We're not at the point where you wake up on Monday morning and say, oh, I got 40 emails. Press a button and say, go answer those emails, and I'll go back to sleep. We're not there yet. Nor will we maybe ever get there. That's not what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to help us a lot, but we just don't trust anything that it outputs because it's my output that I'm going to use. Second thing is, what are we worried about? We're worried about job loss. Yeah, that's something to worry about. There will be jobs replaced, guaranteed by artificial intelligence. How do we work against that? We get education. We get educated. We start learning how to use ChatGPT. We take courses. We start using it in everything we do. We start working it and building it into our process of research and everything we do. The third one is loss of control, and this is a big one, right? Is AI going to diminish humanity? We have control systems, very smart control systems right now, right, that could control all the subways in New York City without ever there being someone driving those subways. But yet we will never let a subway leave a station without someone driving it. There are Boeing 737 control systems that can take off the airplane, that can land the airplane without a pilot being present. We will never let a Boeing 737 take off without a pilot and a co-pilot to back him up. Why is that? It's because we don't trust technology. We shouldn't trust technology. So what makes me think that suddenly AI, because it expresses itself so well, the president's going to say, you know what, you're so smart, why don't you have the launch codes of the nuclear weapons, right? That's just not going to happen.
Right.
Even though it's great fodder for some great movies, and I love them all, right? So I don't want to get rid of the movies at all, but I just don't see that coming through.
Okay.
Right, the iRobot concept, and we're just going to take over the world. We just never give that kind of power over to anything, right? So why should we suddenly do it now?
That makes sense. So
those are the three things. Those are the three things that people are worried about, right? Disinformation, losing job loss, and loss of control. Those are basically what it means to have a fear of AI. But I think we just need to, we can't change it. It ain't going away. So let's embrace it. Let's get in there. Let's start learning with our kids, with our grandparents, start learning how this AI world is going to be, and start acting like we know what it's going to be.
So, going back to what you do for a company, let's say mine, for example, if you were to be building a strategy, are you finding ways to overall employ and execute strategy with the use of AI, or what is it that you're specifically doing through your strategy?
Usually what I do is I try to get people in a workshop inside of a company, all
Okay.
parts of the company get together, teach them some basic, this is how things work, and let within that company and let within their brains, suddenly those lights start to go off, which happens in every workshop. Suddenly someone says, wait, that means we can do our expense reports that way, or we could do our research, we could do that. And that suddenly becomes that internal capability that people start to get out of themselves. Hey, we can do that. They didn't learn it because some high-paid consultant came and told them. They didn't learn it because some product came in and said, this is where we use AI and this is how you're going to do it. They learned it themselves. And that internal culture of AI is what corporations have to build internally.
Okay.
Forget about what they buy on the outside. They have to develop that internally, and that's what our workshops help develop.
That makes so much sense. And I'm laughing because there's this concept, I'm sure you've heard it, common sense isn't common. And so I would like to transition a little bit or maybe a lot of it, as it pertains to just overall life and experience. And what I noticed about you just in observation is that you're a very easygoing and warm individual. And so for me, it was easy for me to approach you, or you made it easy, or made me feel like I could approach you to ask you to be on my podcast. But even outside of that, our regular interactions were ones that were welcoming. And so which I found to be interesting because, being that I thrive when I am the minority. At Luminary, for example, you're the minority
Yes,
as
I
it
am.
pertains to the workspace.
is
And
true.
so there's a lot of different women that you're surrounded by. So what I want to know is, how are you able to do that and do it with the level of comfort that I see you doing it?
You could say I was raised by a very strong woman. I think my wife is a very strong woman. I've got two strong woman daughters. So, women's strength, I think, is a very positive effect and change in our society. This is what is creating a change. There's no question women politicians are some of the best politicians there are. They're the best administrators there are. They're some of the ones that get thought they don't get sidetracked by dumb stuff like guys do all the time, right? And power struggles are no longer, of course, they do struggle with power, but it's not like a man struggling with power where they have to go down and get to a man cave and beat each other up. All that stuff is just not there, right? And I understand that as the improvement and the empowerment and the betterment of our society now. Does that always work in my favor? Sometimes it doesn't, right? Sometimes I give compliments at the wrong time and they get misunderstood. What did you mean by that? And I said, well, I didn't mean anything by that. I just said your dress looked nice. That's all I said, right? So I get into that kind of problem all the time. But still, I do think that that it is time now for the gender identity to be equal, to actually as equal as it was supposed to be at the beginning, as it is written in the Bible. And I see a lot of future of us embracing that for the future.
I love that. But I find it interesting that you bring up the Bible just because, well, I was indoctrinated from the beginning of my origin. And there was this concept that women are to obey and men are to dictate. But what I find is people don't seem to take into account that, for example, in the Bible, somewhere it says, Christ loves, husbands love your wives as Christ loves the church, something to that effect. And then there's this idea of what a virtuous woman is. It's somebody that wakes up early in the morning and before everybody else, and she goes and tends the fields, and she brings in things and takes out things, and she's doing a lot of things. But I feel like there is this collaboration and cooperation, even going way back to Adam and Eve. If you break down, I was told by a theologian that it was not help mate, it's help meet. So to help meet temptation or to help meet life as far as partnership. But somehow that over the years and through various different lenses of religion and doctrine, not to get too heavy and deep into that, I just find that it's interesting how, I guess, when thinking about perception, let's say you and I both watch something occur, whatever it is, I'm going to perceive it from my perspective, and you're going to see it from yours.
Of course.
But the fact remains is that something took place. And so when you're looking at it from a biblical standpoint, or just from an older or more traditional standpoint, to recognize and understand that partnership is prioritized over dictatorship, especially when you're talking about, for example, there were a lot of questions that were, is America ready for female leadership in politics? And obviously, the nation made the determination on that. But I find that even though the majority voted one way, I find that in my everyday life, I am coming across people that believe as you, that are not a part of this narrative that women are hyper hormonal, and as a result, we are going to theoretically, if there is a woman that's the president, that because she's PMSing, she may decide to bomb everybody.
Goodness.
I was just like, how are we making this leap? Especially one being being a woman, and I navigate, during every single month, these fluctuations, and then, like you say, I happen to interact with women, that are in leadership positions, and I don't see any of that played out. I see women that are great leaders, great orators, and great dispensers of information, but somehow there is still this narrative that, I don't know, we need to be coddled, and that we're unable to make decisions, and all of these things. So how is it that you are able to have the thought process that you have in the midst of the saturation of the other narrative?
I think it is very clear, right, when you look at the Bible and you study it as often as I have, there is no difference in rights or responsibilities of women and men. Equal on both sides, all throughout the organization. And of course, lots of times the translations miss that, because when he says, this is for man, when this is for human, right,
yeah.
than just man, right, going forward. But that does not mean, and I think you'll agree with me on that, that does not mean men are the same as women. Thank goodness that doesn't mean that, actually, I would say, for the betterment of our world, right? Women have so much to give to the world, and men have so much to give to the world, that that combination of this is the same. Trying to give equal opportunity, which should be guaranteed, and it's not guaranteed. I tell you, it's not. It's not in certain cultures, and we just have to, slowly hope that those cultures will change, because they, some cultures are taking a long time to get there, right? And some of our cultures just have no excuse for not equal opportunities like ours. But getting to that point should never get to that point without understanding that there's some innate differences, and that those differences are opportunities, and they are good differences, right, that should be taken advantage of and should be used to improve our world. Back to AI, I can tell you this is the one thing I have noticed in a lot of women-led organizations, that sometimes the women-led organizations take a very clear role. We are going to internally learn to use AI and going to be internally become better. We're going to let Tim teach us how to do it, teach us how to use it. We'll tell him how we learned it, but then he's out of there. We're going to do it internally. They are the ones that suddenly organize, okay, once a month, we're going to sit down and have a lunch and learn. We're going to talk about, how did you use AI today? How did you use it this week? And how did you become better? I see that kind of concept of change in women-led organizations much stronger than I do in men-led organizations. And that's back to, I think, that nurturing capability that women have, which organizations need. We can't live without it. But yet we men try to kind of, we're all fighting because, come on, give us a bit of a break. We've been given, Hollywood has told us from the beginning of time, right? There is one man, he is us, and we're fighting against the world, and we come out in the end and, we beat everybody up, right? That's what every movie sends to say. So why do we not suddenly believe that all the time, right? Instead of knowing, no, we are part of a group, and that group needs nurturing, right? That group needs cultivation as a group, right? Not just individuals, but the individuals within the group.
Right.
And women have an automatic understanding of that, and guys still have to learn it.
I love that. I would like to dig a little deeper as it pertains to navigating parenthood.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I want to talk about parenthood is because I, as a mother, have noticed how parenthood is viewed completely different. So as a mom, for example, I am often met with the attitude and assertion that I'm no longer ambitious, because I'm a mother, and so therefore I should be just concerned with PTAs and extracurriculars. However,
there's certainly wrong with you. I can guarantee that.
when it comes to, for example, my brothers and how they are looked at, like being a father is something that's almost celebrated, or being a husband is celebrated in the workplace. But it seems like in the workplace, they tend to prioritize women that are single, because there's this notion that we are no longer going to be high producers, how we once were, now that we are now mothers. But men don't seem to have that same limitation. Is that something that is just from my perspective, or have you noticed that as well in your life?
My kids are mid-30s now, so I've been out of the PTA business for a while.
Yes.
But I got to tell you, I have noticed that many times this amount of work that has to be done to raise a kid just gets placed on mother's lap. Right, and if it's not done right, dad gets to complain, right? And this is obviously clearly wrong, right? There should be just as much. Also, just the way the kids grow up in a family, understanding dad took as much responsibility of me getting dressed, me having a lunch, me getting out the door, as mom did, right? That is such a healthy environment, right, for so many people. And a lot of people don't get that. Clearly, they don't see maybe dual parents, first of all. And if they do see dual parents, it's kind of one of them's a deadbeat, and unfortunately, it tends to be the dad, unfortunately. I'm not proud to say, but it tends to be that side. So if kids can just experience the fact that there is equal responsibility, but different ways of doing things.
Right.
Fathers can can console kids in a certain way, and mothers can console people in a certain way, and yet on the other hand, kids will always run back to mom anyway because she does it better, right? So I think that's the important thing of just finding out the responsibility is equal. You got to play different roles, but the responsibility doesn't change, and that's where a lot of people misunderstand that concept.
I feel like I would be doing my audience a disservice if I didn't ask the question, lived or learned lessons as it pertains to both professionally and personally navigating life in general, because I think most people want to advance and want to evolve, and I feel like we don't tap in as much as we should to people that have obviously been doing it longer and better, and the notion that we have it all figured out, and we can just ask AI as opposed to tapping into the lived resources that are around us. If you could shed any light on just overall experience in managing, like I said, your professional life and personal life, and how you've been able to get this far.
So again, I will not say that I've gotten as far as I have because of AI. I wouldn't dare say that. And number one is AI has been far too young for me to be able to say that. But at the same time, I do see some strength in my planning capabilities, in setting my goals in the right way, because I'm allowing sometimes AI to give me a framework. How should we frame this thinking? What's a good way for us going from one point to the other point? What are some of the great ways that other thinkers would frame their frameworks to do that? Now, again, I still read a lot of books, and I would never say don't read books, but there's a lot of books I haven't read, right? So it's a lot of good that information comes from other thinkers, right, that might be able to bring AI to give me a little bit more idea. Well, structure your framework this way. Structure your objectives this way. Instead of just following through on exactly everything you have to come through, find those smaller goals that you can achieve and measure on the way of getting there, rather than trying to boil the whole ocean. So I see different ways that this could be used to be able to. Sometimes also we get so stuck. And this is one of the frustrating things that you can tell a bunch of kids graduating. That's the example. I heard this from a grad, when they say, you should follow your passions. Well, that's a depressing thought for a lot of kids. Follow my passions. Man, I like to sit there and eat pizza and watch a football game. So please don't say that's my passion to follow. But what is my passion? This bothers a lot of kids growing up. And there's also nothing wrong with saying, listen, I'm just going to change my passion. Right now, this is the most important thing. And there's nothing wrong with being as old as you are, and I'm as old as Methuselah almost, but being as old as I am, I can change my passion. I learned about AI and started my company 2 years ago. Why? Anybody can do that. Just another plug real quick on that same line, that's exactly the same thing about Luminary, right? When Kate started this company called Luminary, she said most of the co-working spaces were not conducive to female entrepreneurship. And she said, I want to change that. I want to have this there. And of course, the big question is, how do they let me in, right? But on the other hand, I kind of love, I have kind of a fatherly approach to a lot of things I think about, and I think a lot of people within Luminary love that about me, right, of doing that. But that kind of ability of saying that women have, and this is what I also love about AI, back to that again, AI used to be something that would be very expensive. You could experience it if you had enough enterprise dollars to give you that ability to go find out how to use AI, like IBM had a system to do that. But you needed $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 just to be able to get it to say hello. Now it's free. Right? So now people are getting the same level of AI as Goldman Sachs has right now, right? So you can start your own business right now. You can start with the thinking. You can start getting those frameworks together on how do I build out my business and put myself on a timeline and get those workloads identified as Goldman Sachs does. So why can't you go do that? Why can't you go be a competition to Goldman Sachs? It was the thing. Who would ever try to do
Right,
that?
right.
But nowadays you can.
Right.
Because it is available and it's able for you to get to do that. So that's what I see as the newest changes. And the nice thing I like about it, because I'm at Luminary the whole time, that's all I see is female entrepreneurs. I see a huge change. I think there's a lot of people there that are starting their own business. They're following what they think they can achieve and do and what they're passionate about. And that's what's building business. And that's what's going to build America, by the way. Right? These large corporations, they're all going to fall apart. I think the corporation of the future is going to be that small 2 to 5 person company that is able to generate revenue, send out all their workloads out to other people rather than hiring a bunch of people, and actually change and create the business that we know of the future.
I love that. So if we could focus a little bit on collaboration, community, and mentorship. I feel like I've had a unique experience in that I've always been in proximity to people such as yourself. And so people often ask me, or I'm often asked, well, how did you get this opportunity, or how did you come across this information? And to be honest, it's because somebody like yourself, I was around and I saw you doing whatever it was, and then I came and asked a question, and you gave me either a framework, a starting point, or you gave me something to move or press forward with. And so that, I feel, has given me an edge as it compares to, you know, my colleagues. And so working in media is very competitive, to say the least. And so I've always been surrounded and propelled through competing. However, in my later years, I have come to understand that collaborating has really been able to help me to move forward. And so particularly Luminary and the Entreprenista League. Those are two organizations that I joined last year who have completely shifted. So I'm sure you've heard of whatever it is for dummies, how to do this for dummies and how to do that for dummies. And so I was one where I was always at the library trying to LLCs for dummies or foundations for dummies or whatever it is. And I was always trying to figure it out myself. But when I joined the organization of Luminary and Entreprenista League, suddenly I didn't have to just go it alone. And there were people that were further along in the trajectory of entrepreneurship that understood systems. And I feel like when it comes to the financial structure or the educational structure of our world or society or politically, when you understand the system, you can navigate it differently and better. And so I feel like if people would understand the value that comes with collaboration and as opposed to self-isolation, because I feel like I see people unnecessarily struggling. And because I feel like there's this fear, like if I talk about my idea or I talk about my company, that someone's going to steal it. But what I love is, I'm going to paraphrase and loosely, Oprah essentially said at some point on the internet that whatever it is that you're interested in doing, understand that there's somebody that's already done it and that's probably doing it better. So if you are interested in, for example, pizza sauce, you will understand that there are a plethora of brands that make pizza sauce, but that doesn't mean that your pizza sauce can't be successful or can't be, or that there isn't a place for it at the table. So I feel like there's room to explore how collaboration and partnership and networking, the critical role that has played. And I want to know, have you seen that it's played a role in your life?
100%. I think not only do I understand this, we've come now 2 years or 3 years now out of the pandemic, right? It was since the pandemic first came. And of course, that first concept of everybody can do all their work just fine from at home was anew for many companies, right?
Right.
I had actually been working for Salesforce for 5 years by that time, and they already practiced that. But one of the things that they never quite got, or any work from home or work virtually never misses, is that concept of mentorship, that concept of group thinking. When you get people together and everybody's pulling on the same rope and you can look in each other's eyes, we've lost all that. Zoom just doesn't do it, right? So if we could do all those things and those great things from at home, and bring those things together, then I think we would do amazing things. We just can't get them done because we're humans and we need to do that. And that's why you're seeing companies like J.P. Morgan just announced March, everybody is back to work, right? 5 days a week, not 3 days a week, 5 days a week, they're back to work. So this kind of thought is a process that I think people are undergoing to say we're missing the human-to-human connection. And I would love to say, first of all, there's not enough time. There's not enough books that write all that process down. The communication that you and I have when we look at each other in our eyes, there's so much more we're saying to each other, right, that people are not really putting in you can't put it in words, and we can't put it in a Zoom call. We can't write it over email. So that kind of concept is something that keeps us going in the direction. It motivates us. It gives us ideas of what to do. It also gets us to think about, well, what I'm doing I thought was good because it sounded good. And everybody's gone through that experience, right? Try that experience. Say, okay, here's my plan. Here's what I'm going to do this week. Here's how I'm going to build my business. Got it all written out. I go in Monday morning, and then I tell someone about it. And the first thing, as soon as I say it, I think, wow, that's the dumbest plan I've ever heard of. That's just absolutely useless. Why did I even think about that stuff? But you need that ability to communicate even your internal ideas to make sure they're the right ones or not the right ones to go forward with. And if we have a plan, and we do this all the time too, right? We plan to get all this done in 1 week. We'll never get it done in 1 week. We might get the first 3 days of what we're hoping to get done because it's just not enough time. But that all comes from the fact that we're thinking about it internally. We're not communicating and getting into a group to get feedback from what we say right away, to find out what we're thinking. Is that the right thing we're thinking, or could we be thinking in a different way? We humans need that. Apes need it. We need it. We all need it, right? We need to touch. We need to feel.
Right.
We need that communication between people. That's what makes a big difference in our interactions, in our inside thinking, in our ability to actually acclimate and get things done, right? To improve the world that's around us. It's an important thing to have. Now, again, how does artificial intelligence play into this, right? So one of the things I try to do is artificial intelligence is a great productivity tool to help you personally get higher level of productivity. But the biggest thing is when artificial intelligence becomes that extra person in the team room, right? You got a 5-person team, 4-person team where we decide we're going to do this. Let's put AI as just another team member. Right? They're sitting at the edge of the table. What do you think about that? And then let's all discuss it. That's the best way. Working with AI as a person is what helps enhance that team's capability and think at a higher level.
That is a very practical way to think about it. Do you feel that you were at all socialized to think of partnership as it pertains to pledging or being a part of a college group, or even at any point in your life? Do you feel like being a part of was something that was embedded into your psyche somewhere along the way, or do you feel like you just evolved to that place where you just observed enough to realize the value of collaboration through organization?
I probably learned that too late. I'll be honest with you. I've been indoctrinated by the Hollywood style of what is the macho man that I've always tried to be, and that was Claude Van Damme, who got just beaten up left and right at the beginning of the movie, but at the end of the movie, he got all the bad people and beat them up all together, and he just stood there and walked off into the sunset, right? I've lived that, and I've noticed that's part of my thinking. Nowadays, I don't think that way anymore, right? I see I'm part of a group. This group is going to make something brand new. We're going to get to a higher level because I believe that's possible. Can we as a group to do that? Not because that's going to be less for me to pat myself on the head, right? But it also allows me to think I'm investing in other people. I'm doing what I can to help other people get to a higher level, so that's going to help me get to a higher level. And as long as we all say, listen, all the time we have and all the energy we have and all the breath we have, we are investing in other people, that makes a big difference. Right? It makes a difference of looking at things.
So before we bring this episode to a close, I love to always ask my guests, is there something that you feel like we should have discussed or covered that you would like to bring to the forefront?
This is going to be a tough one. I think, again, my impetus for most people is get involved, get started on artificial intelligence, start to learn it. If you need a class, go get a class. Don't spend too much on the class. I mean, I've had some horrendous numbers. We used to charge like $100, and if you're looking for a job, we'd give you that for free. So don't spend too much on class. Spend a lot of time just doing the free stuff that you can learn about artificial intelligence, and learn to just use it yourself.
Okay.
Right. I was impetus. Everybody should be doing it. There's a lot of people that kind of took it off and said, "Yeah, I tried it, didn't like what I got out of it, and so I stopped using it." Right. Try to get back and try to see what could I do, and then I would also ask everybody just to dream. What would be what you achieve if you knew this? What could you do if you had somebody tell you, listen, 5 people have tried this before, that didn't work out, but this one guy did it this way, and therefore you could get it to the higher level. What could you be? Dream what you could be if you had someone at the table who gave you all that information. What would that do for you?
I love that. And finally, where can people find you on the huge internet as it pertains to either your LinkedIn profile, Instagram, or whatever you feel comfortable sharing with my audience?
Everything and anywhere. I'm an open book. My name's Tim Miner, ER at the end, because I'm old enough to drink. But so that's on LinkedIn, Tim Miner, and I've also got a website, which is www.bythepeople.tech. Technologies, bythepeople.tech. And I think we've also got a Facebook and an Instagram account and everything else. So Tim Miner is the best way to look for me.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for joining me. And thank you for imparting your wisdom and insights. And I feel like I definitely have grown and learned during this episode, and I hope that you all have done the same. If you have any questions, concerns, or any of the above, feel free to contact me via DM or through the links on my various different platforms. All of it will be dumped into my email, so please feel free to do so. Again, thank you for taking the time out of your day to join us in this conversation, and I will be here same place, same time on next Wednesday. I hope that you have an amazing Friday and weekend. Take some time to breathe in, breathe out, process, and download an AI app and see what you can do. You might even be surprised at what you discover along the way. Again, I am your host, Tasha Ray, and my guest is Tim Miner. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.